Welcome to The Liminal, the podcast where we explore the space between the moment a college student takes their last final and before they take their first job. Each week we dive into the world of graduation and commencement, and we talk to different leaders around the world that play in this space. My name is Chase Rigby. I'm the host of the podcast, also the CEO of Tassel. We're a software company that creates these personalized graduation experiences for universities and their students. We handle everything from the registration to the AI name recording, the caps and gowns, and we try to streamline that process as much as possible, which is why I'm really excited to bring Dan on and talk today, because he's in the trenches with me here at Tassel. Not only just at Tassel, but Dan, you've had an incredible experience just between planning and executing commencement at, even before Tassel, but SIU and at St Louis University. So you've got these decades of experience working as an administrator, but also have been at Tassel for what, 7 years now? Even
Yeah,
more
7
than that?
years. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Well, I'm excited to be able to jump into it. And, first question I always have to ask is, how are you doing today, Dan?
I am good. It's cold. It is. We've got about 8 inches of snow on the ground right now, and we're in it for a week or so before it starts warming back up. But otherwise, we're real good.
That's good. It is, tis the time of the year, and I should say Happy New Year. We're excited for all the things that are coming in 25. So, Dan, the first question I always ask everybody on this podcast, to be able to conjure up some memories. I want to hear tell me what you remember about your own graduation.
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I don't remember a ton about graduation. I remember being there. I don't remember how I got my cap and gown. I know I had to pay for it. I think there was maybe a fair or at the bookstore. And I remember going there, and the biggest thing I remember is it was like texting was just like becoming a real mainstream thing. And so we were all sitting on the floor with our old Nokia phones out, T9 input, texting each other, where are you? What do you think of this? And I'm pretty sure it was the lieutenant governor of Missouri who was the commencement speaker. And I honestly couldn't tell you a thing that he said. And then I remember crossing the stage, and they had two announcers, and they kind of would overlap each other. So your name would be ending, my name would start, they were kind of to get those rads across the stage. And I thought it was interesting, but I also thought, oh man, I don't totally get my family didn't get to totally get my name, because as soon as they were at the last part of my last name, they start announcing the next person's name. So, yeah, but that's kind of the most that's in my brain about my commencement from college.
Did they at least announce your name and get your last name pronunciation correct?
They did, but I was a little bit lucky in that sense. We at that point, here's your card, you can write a phonetic name on there. But then when I got to stage, it was actually one of my professors who I had for a number of courses was announcing my name. So he knew me, he knew how to say my name. And so who knows if they would have gotten it correctly if it had been someone who I didn't know once we all was crossing the stage.
Yeah, because I know we even saw that in this past spring last year, where there were a lot of, it seems like a lot of viral moments have happened as names are being mispronounced. So that hasn't necessarily changed from when, we were
Right.
back in school.
Yeah.
Because after you were studying and you had your own graduation, I know that then you went to different universities, St. Louis University and SIU, and actually were part of the commencement planning teams.
Yeah, so I went to my first job after college was at St. Louis University in the events department, which we handled events all over campus. So one of the things that did operate out of that office was commencement on campus, and that commencement there was a huge machine. Each one of the schools had what they referred to as a pre-commencement, so kind of a ceremony in one of the different venues on campus, and that's where they did stage crossings and more kind of intimate moments for the graduates, where they announce the grads and they cross the stage. And there's also usually a huge reception for each school afterwards. And so there's all those components of the venue and the reception, where it's happening on campus, catering, a lot of nitty gritty going into that. And then when I first started, they didn't have their own on-campus arena. So then the big ceremony would be down at the arena where the St. Louis Blues play. Then they built their own arena on campus during my tenure there. And then so we shifted to having it at our own arena. And so then they would have the big ceremony, which wasn't, they didn't have grad across the stage minus a few that received awards. And then that's where they would have the big commencement speaker, and they always tried to have, somewhat of a name come in for that. And, the president of the university used to do this weird thing where you go, I declare you sons and daughters of St. Louis University forever. And he had this really weird cadence that I think, I don't know if it was just, but it's a moment I think that all those grads remember. So, that was kind of cool.
Sounds like it's effective. I mean, you remember it.
Yeah, for sure. And I never even graduated from there. But yeah, after, I was there for 7 years, and then I got recruited to Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, by the director of the marketing department at the time. They were looking for someone to coordinate their commencement ceremonies full time there. And so I took that on, and that was a full-time position for me. We planned, when I started, we did 1 summer ceremony, 2 fall ceremonies, and 4 to 5 spring ceremonies. And that, I grew that into, I think, 6 or 7 spring ceremonies and 3 fall ones right before I left to join the company here. So I never actually got to see that vision through to the end, but, hopefully had it set up and ready to go for the person who took my place. But yeah, that was a whole new ball game, because it was kind of a one-stop shop. I was doing all of the, the venue planning, rental planning, the registration from the graduates. That was all stuff that I was building. Had kind of a dirty registration website, had the master Excel sheet that we kept all of the data on. That had, if my computer died and never got locked, we would have been SOL. But it was a lot of fun. It could get really stressful at times, but by the end of those days when commencement was happening, it was, such a great feeling to having completed such a big project, but then also seeing the smiling faces of the graduates and the parents, and, the photos that were happening. And, just that's a feeling in the air that you don't often get to experience, where you've got thousands of people in the room that are, experiencing this joy together.
Tell me a little bit more about the differences between those schools. It sounded like St. Louis University, there was a lot larger ceremonies, and maybe it was decentralized, and at SIU, it was kind of a one-stop shop, is what you said.
Yeah, so it flew that every school had their own, like I said before, pre-commencement. So each school was having their own thing somewhere on campus. Now, as I got planned, I had a coworker in my office who did the majority of the work for event services, was the department there. And I don't know specifically, like, if she made decisions for them or if the schools made decisions on their own. But each ceremony was kind of their own unique thing. At SIU Edwardsville, it was basically just as many schools that we could fit in the venue at the time. Was we only had like a 3,500 seat arena there that we could fit in, and so as many grads as we could get on the floor of the basketball surface there. That kind of what dictated how many ceremonies we had. If we had a big enough venue, we would have done them all at once in one ceremony. So like the
Gotcha.
schools didn't really have the opportunity to do their own thing. We did have School of Nursing did do like a pinning ceremony beforehand that they kind of planned on their own. It helped a little bit with some of the logistics for that, but mostly that was their own thing. So yeah, we made decisions for them based on, where the graduates were sitting and how the script was looking. The deans of the colleges didn't really have anything to say besides shaking hands on stage. The script was really consistent ceremony to ceremony, almost identical, with the exception of sometimes there would be different, the speakers at like the speaker of honor or the, special guest at the ceremony wouldn't be consistent from ceremony to ceremony. And so sometimes we would have a different one. Sometimes we would get that part of the program altogether. But basically there was me, and I kind of led a committee that was very loosely involved of, getting those things. And my office reported directly to the chancellor's office. So, kind of ran up the chain. Hey, here's what we're doing. And usually there was some trust that was built already before I arrived. And then, I was able to maintain that trust. So they were pretty much okay with us just making the decisions and running with it. We never did anything too crazy to break that or make them pull the reins back on what we were doing.
What sort of tools did you guys use? Obviously, this is almost 10, 15 years ago. What sort of tools did you use at St. Louis University, and tools that you had? What was the difference between the I think you mentioned like a laptop and a local database. And how did you guys actually execute and plan, and how did students register? What was the difference between those two schools?
Yeah, so I don't really recall what the registration looked like for commencement at St. Louis University. I don't even know if there was, if we just assumed that graduates were coming and we put out as many chairs as we could. I do remember a time in the big venue at Flu where there's tons of chairs left over. Other times there's, kind of gone, are we going to make it? Are we going to have enough seats,
Yeah.
for everybody coming in here? But at at SIU, the budget was small, or at least what I always thought was small, and I was always afraid to ask for anything. And it's like, okay, this is the money that we're given. I've got to make it work within these constraints. So it's just I was fortunate to work in the marketing department, which also managed the website there for the entire school. And so, I was able to kind of get a quick registration form built that would, tabulate data into a spreadsheet that I would pull locally, and they had all kinds of lookups built in to start matching data and doing counts of how many people were going to be there. We assumed and told graduates they couldn't bring any more than 4 guests. We always were very limited on feeding and had a big overflow space. So really it was very homegrown there. One of the first, besides we had vendors that took photographs for us of all the grads crossing the stage. We had a vendor that came in and provided flower sales for guests coming in. That's really common in the industry, and I think really because that's a no-cost service to schools. They're just those vendors want to get in the door and be able to make their money by selling things to their grads. But one of the first things that we actually looked for help on or contracted out is when we started doing graduate display with marching order, capital, but previously marching order. That was and the way it came to be was one of the deans was at a ceremony for one of their students at a different institution and thought, oh man, that's super cool. We need to make that happen at SIUE. So in my first spring there, went to a conference with the Express. I was told, you need to find this company that does this and sign up. That's what the goal is here for this conference. So, that's really what we did for those. I was there for 7 years, and everything else was pretty much stayed homegrown. We tried to do tickets at one point. We didn't do that. The folks at the university said we don't need to do it. And yeah, it's that's really the only outside vendor that we pay for. Minus we worked with rental company to bring in chairs and other things, and we had a really terrible audio system in the venue, so we would hang speakers and have an audio company provide quality experience. I was able to convince the administration there a little bit about hey, this being a school that doesn't have a huge attraction with their athletics department, things like that. Let's look at commencement as this is the single weekend where the most guests are going to be coming to campus. We don't see anything else at this time, or with this quantity of people. So let's invest, the money into making it as great of an experience as we can. And we made a little bit of leeway there. But one of the things that we did get, was just a quality sound system. People could hear, people could see. We lit up the stage. It made the venue look really nice.
That's something I've noticed too, especially as I've talked to so many different schools and ceremony coordinators over the last years. I've been CEO of Tassel. It's really interesting to think about that. In some schools and some institutions, graduation and commencement is one of the most highly attended event on campus. Unless you're a big football school or a big sports school, but there are a lot of these schools that are customers that commencement is it, and that's the opportunity I think that you have to you get everybody there. It's your aunt and uncles, it's the little brothers that will eventually see them take that step, and they want it's a marketing event at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
I think that's what's been interesting to see this trend, and I'd be interested to see hear your thoughts of over the last 20 or so years. If you think about commencement, it hasn't really changed. Even hundreds of years ago, commencement was very much an academic exercise.
Yeah.
And I think what you're describing and kind of the points that I've picked up along the way having only been in this industry, a year or so, I'm realizing that there is like this shift that's happening, and it's becoming more of a less of an academic exercise and more of a marketing opportunity. I wonder if like is did you go through a similar transition as well as you moved from university to university, and now that you're here at Tassel? What are your observations on
I
that?
mean, I think at St. Louis University, I think it was a marketing opportunity for them. Like we really like they, the money that's spent on flowers that adorn stages at universities is crazy. And I know it was a lot there, but I think at that point in my career, I was a little naive. I was just doing what I was told at that point. Didn't quite realize what was happening. But it really connected at SIUE as what this opportunity is. I think working in the marketing department, planning that event, out of that department, it's like, okay, this really is a unique opportunity. We want to celebrate these grads, and that's what the goal is here. But you have this captive audience for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like let's show them who we are. Let's show them what we can do. Let's wow them. Who knows? Like you said, brothers and sisters in the audience who see this happening, like, wow, this is really cool. This is really fun. I want to do this when I am, old enough to go to college.
I think that's an interesting point too. Actually, some new research that I know we'll release here in a little bit, but there's such high correlation, even as a marketing event for the student that's graduating, that's about to cross the stage. If you can get that student across the stage and they have that perfect moment, and you say their name right, and their name's up on the screen, their families in the stands cheering them on, they're 4 times more likely to donate in the future or to
Uh,
re-enroll or to send their kids there. And
mhm.
so I think it's like, so yeah, it's the brother and sister in the stands, but it's even the student that I think walks across the stage, because that's almost their last opportunity or their last interaction, an ability to interact with the student who's just spent 4 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars on this experience. So
Yeah.
I think it's super fascinating to see how this event is starting to evolve. I wonder, from your perspective, like, where do you see still opportunity to modernize and streamline that whole process that the student has to go through to be able to even get to the stage?
I think the challenge that people are looking at right now, or that I see from, you know, well, while I'm doing product work now for March and Warrior, but for Tassel, but for my first 5-6 years with the company, I was in our customer success. So I was regularly talking with the coordinators and kind of figuring this out with them. I think a lot of folks are in the same shop as I was, where there is coordinators that they're handling this on their own. And so like finding partners to make it easy, is easier, is I
Mm,
think a huge, huge need for people out there. And when you think about it from a graduate's perspective, especially when you look at different vendors coming in to provide services like what we do for, registration, name recordings, display, but they've also got cap and gown and, invitations, announcements. You've got photos and diplomas, all those things, reference. And a lot of times it's a different venue for each, a different website they've got to go to register. And I think
yeah.
it can be exhausting, for a graduate, especially in the time where they're coming up on finals of their senior year, where they're working on capstone project and long papers and things like that. More work than they probably had their entire college career. And you're asking them to do all these things. I think it's really easy for them to forget, or to overlook an email or communication of something that's coming in, like, hey, here's an important thing. And we see that all the time because we get that feedback from coordinators, and like, if we could just get a graduate to read an email, we would be doing great. And then we will, get support requests that come into Tassel saying, hey, I never got this email. And we can go and look at a graduate's record and, say, well, actually, yeah, you did. You got it this time and this time and this time
Mm.
and this time. And, they may have just missed it or whatever. And, it's not our place to scold a graduate about it, but yeah, we can, we know we can see that transaction history, going in there. And I think that proved the point of like, hey, people are overwhelmed. There's a lot going on, and to ask them to do things in multiple places. So ultimately getting back to your question, I think streamlining, getting a single point of, interaction for a graduate where they can do all the things that need to happen. Pay for regalia, put in their name, put in a picture, put a message, order or pre-order photos or anything like that. I think that's the need that's out there right now, at least that I can see.
Yeah, and I think that is what we're trying. We're starting to build that here at Tassel. And I know you're right there in it, trying to solve a lot of these problems. There's you basically just described like this very fragmented experience, which I think too is even more compounded the fact that the students that are going through this are a lot different than maybe like you and I, or maybe our parents or grandparents when they went through it. I think today's student and the modern consumer expects things to be streamlined.
Mhm.
They don't, to them, I think that student experience of like, well, you've got to go here and then you pay for your cap and gown here, but then you've got to go and wait in line and pick it up here at the bookstore. Like those are not commercial experiences that they are
Right.
equipped or have ever had experience handling, right?
Right.
So it stands reason that like we've got to fix these things and catch up, because ultimately I think it's what's best for the student. But I also think it's like also what's in the best interest of the university. I'd be interested to hear like I know you're working on like a bunch of different things, but is there one of those you kind of describe this like life cycle of the student that's graduating, all these steps they have to take? Is there one of them that you're working on that you want to highlight or plug and talk
Yeah.
more about? I'd love to hear.
Yeah. We are, one of the things I've just been, we've been really concentrating on lately is, we're integrating a cap and gown ordering experience into our registration forms. And we've had some schools do this in the past where they will ask for sizing information from the graduates and be able to do that. But we're taking a couple steps further now. Is we're partnered with Oak Hall right now to provide cap and gown through our experience. So a graduate is in their normal flow of registering for the ceremony, doing everything that is on the registration form, and that's completely up to the school as to what elements they want to offer there. But then they get into ordering the cap and gown, and they're going to be able to do their checkout there. They're going to be able to add a shipping address so it comes straight to them at home. And you talked about like going to the bookstore to pick up a cap and gown or order it. Like I mean, the majority of purchasing, or at least in my opinion, or what I see from my household, the majority of purchasing is happening online. A lot of times, all that stuff is getting shipped to your house. You don't have to
Yeah.
go through those extra steps to get that stuff. So ship to home, order through our site, payment. We're trying to make this as eliminate as many stops as possible for the graduate. And I think one of the things that that's going to make it unique here is that the only decision they have to make when they're ordering this cap and gown is telling us what size they need. And it's a single selection. You have a few options of weight categories and I'm sorry, height categories and weight categories in that. You don't have to give us any specific information. It's just a range. But based on the data that we already have on the graduate, we know exactly what style of gown, what style of hood, what color tassel,
Yeah.
all that stuff that they already need. So and this was it was so funny when I've heard coordinators say this many, many times, and I experienced it too, especially when I was working at SIUE. You talk to a graduate and you're like, hey, what's your degree? What's your major? What school are you in? And I don't know. A lot of times they could come up with a major, but to say that are you getting a bachelor or a master or
Okay.
a bachelor of arts, bachelor of science, they didn't know. They didn't always know until we have the data. So you don't need to make that decision. We'll do it for you. We're going to get it right the first time. We're going to show up in your front door in time for commencement and make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, and I think that like you hit the nail on the head of the reason why I think it seems like where the trend is going and where we're experiencing a lot of growth is centralizing a lot of these operations, because the data is king. The ability to be able to import your graduates, who's eligible, get them registered, get them tickets, get them the cap and gown, but then be able to see, wait, who hasn't registered, or who didn't buy the cap and gown, all in one place. Because I know right now, and probably when you were running commencement, they were all in these these separate databases or Excel worksheets, which makes it really hard, I feel like, to reconcile. I think a lot of conversations I've had with different ceremony coordinators are like, I just want to be able to send a text reminder to those students
Yeah.
who didn't pick up their cap and gown, or who haven't finished their registration. And the
Yep. And
segmentation of that communication is really is what I'm excited about to see.
yeah, for sure. I mean, and we're absolutely building that in where you can target those grads who hasn't ordered the cap and gown. Let's fire off an email to them, a text message, and you can schedule it at certain intervals. Every Friday, I'm going to send an email to any graduate who hasn't ordered cap and gown just as a reminder, hey, you haven't done this yet. If you want to participate, you have to do this.
There's so many other pieces of that I think are going to be beneficial. I wonder, like, the other pain point I'd love to get your opinion on is what is stopping, and why has this been so slow to change? Why are cap and gown, like, if we're just picking on that a little bit, pulling that string a little bit, why is it that cap and gown regalia purchasing is so far behind the modern consumer e-commerce experience?
I can't say for everybody what's going on here, but in my experience, both professionally and talking with other customers, there's a lot of places where a third party has kind of a stronghold on what's going on there. Like maybe the bookstore is the approved vendor for cap and gown on campus, and they're the only ones who can do it. And bookstores often want to distribute the cap and gowns in the bookstore for the sole purpose of getting foot traffic. So like, hey, let's walk the graduate. When I was at SIU, the pickup counter for cap and gown was all the way in the back of the bookstore. So you have all of the tchotchkes and all of the hoodies and all of the sweatpants and all the jackets that had all the branding all over it on your way to get it and on your way back out. I think there's a lot of hope that they're going to pick up a lot, some more merchandise too, and
Upsell.
and like bookstores also often will tag on a 20, 30, 40, 50, 100% markup on the cost of the cap and gown, so that it raises their bottom line as well. They're making some money off of that traffic coming in, which is really a shame. You've got a lot of time graduates who are already cash strapped, they're looking at all the student loan debt and, just maybe not working or working part-time and not having a lot of money to throw around. And all of a sudden, you're getting a huge markup on something that doesn't cost much to begin with. But, why are we ringing them for all their worth at this point?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited that we're trying to bring that cost down, make it more inclusive and accessible. To me, it makes sense. Like, these things show up on your doorstep, and they're either baked into the fees or they're super low cost because we can be able to do it directly. So I'm really excited. So when are these integrations launching? I know that you have a bunch of new products rolling out, but specifically this regalia integration.
Yeah, so we're looking at the end of this month, which is January of 2025, to have our launch with our first partner customer to get that up and going. And, we'll be able to talk to some other folks soon about getting that integrated. And then hopefully we'll have some really good data at the end of the semester to say, hey, here's what worked, and here's how it can save you some time and keep your graduates happy.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thanks for joining us. I
Absolutely.
always end with a final question, some of which you've answered a little bit, but I want you, like, if you can answer it in just one sentence. Here's the question: why is graduation, this graduation moment, so important for students?
It's kind of like the word commencement. It's a new beginning. It's you finish this journey and you're transitioning into the next phase of your life, and it's a chance to celebrate the accomplishment for yourself and for your family, and and kind of get, I think, closure on the college experience, and the launch into the world. The world's your oyster at that point. It's a very exciting time for these grads.
I like that. It is. It really is like that capstone moment. I'd argue, like, besides birth of a child or your own wedding, like, this is up there of your most important moments in your life. And so to get that right, I think it just makes sense for the university to be able to invest and deliver that moment for them. All right, we'll wrap up the show here, but the last little segment, Dan, is wanted to turn it over to you in case there was anything else you wanted to plug, stuff you're working on, stuff you wanted to say. So tell me what your plugs are for this, episode.
I mean, I think we plugged my big the big thing we're working on right now is this cap and gown. But we're going to be talking more about this and some of our new features at the upcoming the North American Association of Commencement Officers Conference, which is in Long Beach, California. I think in the second week of February this year. And both professionally here with Tassel, it's always a great conference to talk to customers and to share ideas, but also going to it many years as a coordinator and a professional at universities. It was just the experience was what was fantastic. Going through sessions, talking to vendors, but one of the biggest things I always, as a coordinator, got out of it was sitting and talking with peers,
Sure.
about those experiences. And so if you've been there before and are coming back, we're really excited to see you. If you've been there before and you haven't, book tickets ASAP so you can get out there. And if you're unfamiliar with it, look it up. It's a really great time. Lots of great learning opportunities. I highly recommend it.
A lot of like-minded individuals at NACO, so we're excited. And I know we're going to be rolling out. We have a bunch of new features that we'll be on stage. So come and see us. All right. Well, that's kind of our cutoff point, Dan. So it's been an awesome episode of The Liminal. Thanks for coming on. And if you want to stay up to date with everything else, follow us on LinkedIn, and we'll see you next time.